Awesome. Love the countdown.
It is fun. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Figma tutorial series. We have Anthony and Kaio here with us. They are both mentors at Designlab. They are going to be helping out with this presentation today. Thanks so much again for joining us. I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. To begin, I'm Emily. I'm one of the admissions reps here at Designlab. I'm sure you have seen me spamming you in Slack about this event over the past week or so. So just a couple of things to keep in mind as we get started. Anthony is going to be doing a presentation on some Figma best practices. He's going to be talking about components, auto layout, some Figma plugins, and just giving a little bit of a general introduction to Figma to get started, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Kaio is going to be over in our questions tab, helping out with a Q&A. So if you do have questions about anything that's being presented, you can go ahead and post them over in that Q&A section. One thing that I just want to make super clear is that Anthony is going to be presenting and not looking at the Q&A. So he's not ignoring you. We just don't want Anthony to be super distracted during his presentation with the Q&A. So that's why Kaio is here helping to facilitate and going to be answering questions along with us. You are going to be receiving a recording of this at the end of the presentation, as long as you've registered. Obviously, if you're present, you've registered. So you can definitely feel free, to leave early if you need to for any reason. Lastly, Steven's beat me to it, but I was going to say, go right ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. You can feel free to say hello. You're all in foundations learning together, so definitely don't hesitate to say hi. Again, just real quick, please make sure that if you're posting questions about anything we're moving through, that they're over in the questions tab, which is right next to the chat tab. If you're finding the chat and the questions distracting and you don't want to look at it, you can collapse it in the lower right-hand side of your screen. There's an option that says hide sidebar. Right next to it, there's an option that says enter full screen mode, so you can make it larger. I'll be keeping my eye on the chat and on the questions as we move through the presentation, just to make sure everything is running smoothly. But other than that, I'm going to hand over to Anthony. So both myself and Kaio are going to turn off our mics and our cameras and let Anthony go on over and start his presentation. All right, awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks, Anthony. And we're very excited to have everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anthony. I am a mentor here at Designlab. I've been a mentor for like a year and a half or so. I mentor students in foundations, as well as I'm a career coach in Designlab's career services. When students get out of the academy and they're designers, I help them find a job. I'm going to walk you through a bit about, I'm going to share my screen in a second. We're going to walk through Figma. I'm going to give you some an overview of the interface. I know most of you have been using it, but there are some things just to keep in mind. I will go through auto layout. I will go through components as much as I can with the limited time that we have. I am not going to go over variants or prototyping or interactive components as just too complex for this meeting. I will say another thing, that there's a ton of information out there. That's great you're in this webinar. Also look at other information that's out there. There's designers creating videos all the time on components and all things related to Figma. Also, one thing, if you haven't noticed, Figma is a relatively new company. I think it's like 5 or 6 years old. They are constantly updating their features and coming out with more features. They just came out with interactive components. So things are going to change. Things are fluid. Just keep at it. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll jump right into it. Okay. I assume everyone can see the Figma file. Great. So we see, we've been here, Figma. Just to give you a quick overview, you have your layers list on your left. There's really four main sections. The toolbar that runs across the top the properties panel on the right, and your canvas in the middle. Things I see, and to keep in mind that I see a lot with students, is your layers list. Everything is a layer. Rectangles, text, it adds up really quickly. The projects that you're working on in foundations, you see a lot of layers. But when you get into the real world, when you become designers and you're working on files that have, 150, 200 screens, that layers list could get really overwhelming. So labeling and organizing your layers is really important. Layer management, it will save you a ton of time. So if we go in and we need to make a frame, obviously you could select a frame up here, or the letter F. Everything lives within a frame in UX design. So this is your viewport for an iPhone 11, and then everything else lives within that viewport. Okay, let me just, the properties panel changes depending on where you are. So if I selected this this frame for the iPhone 11, you could see the properties panels change. I could do different things with this. I could change the color. I could give an effect. I could change the size. And then you could see on the layers list that here's the frame. Once I start adding to that frame, the layers list begins to populate. So I could put some text. And you could see over on the layers, it's within that frame. Once I start creating rectangles, multiple rectangles. Now, if you look at the layers list, and one thing to keep in mind with Figma, and this is the beauty of Figma and these programs, is that they are programs that you're going to work with other designers in. So, you're going to share your files with others. You're going to work within the same files with other designers and product managers and maybe even engineers. You're going to walk them through your designs. Making sure that you label things is really important. If somebody else goes into your file, it gets really confusing. So layer management. So I think in this course, the most you're designing is maybe like 4 screens. If you look, I just want to show you something really quick. This is a design I worked on recently for an app, and there are 60 screens here. And this isn't the whole app. This is just an onboarding for a first-time user flow. And you could see the layers. Everything here is labeled and organized as best I can because I had to hand this off to the engineering team. So again, I just emphasize that it's easy to go in and label things. The pain in going in and labeling is so much less than when you have to go and find something. So that's, this is the basics. I think you all know this. Just make sure that all your files live in your frame. Like I just took this rectangle out. This red rectangle, it is not in this frame. So when I go to export and I look at the preview, oops, you will not see that red frame because you will not see that red box because it's outside of the frame. So if I select it and I hover over, you see the 2 blue lines. If I hover over iPhone, now it's in the frame. And then when we go to export and look at the preview, you can see it's in there. All right. I think that's it for best practices. Just keep those habits in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, one last thing, as you're going through your projects, especially those reproduction projects, it's a good idea to take your time and think about, all right, how am I going to approach this project? What is my focus going to be? I know I want to reproduce this, but maybe I'm really going to focus on the layers, or I'm going to work on components. take your time and think about how you're going to approach a project before you just dive right in there. I do that all the time with my projects. I want to make sure that I think it through before I start designing and go down a road and then have to backtrack. Also, in your Figma file are pages. You could have multiple pages, and that's easy to create. You just hit this plus button here, and you create a page. And you could label your pages, really important. And if you need to remove a page, just right-click, and you could delete it. So let's go into, I think the first thing we'll do is, let's go into components. I want to be mindful of time. Let's go into components and just really talk about these at a high level. Components are elements you could use across your designs, and they help make your designs more consistent. Like that example I showed you of my work, there were like, I don't know, 25, 30 orange buttons. And if I needed to change those colors from orange to blue, I could just do it once with the master. So this is a component. It is a frame. It's called frame 1. We're going to change the name, and we're going to call it button 1. And this is the master component. I'm going to show you how to make this. So to make a simple button, there's a number of ways, but I'm just going to type some words in here, save, and I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to flip that so that the rectangle is behind the button. I'm going to style the button color itself and give it a, let's give it a purple. I'm going to change the text color, give it a fill. I'm going to give this a little corner radius up here. And that is a simple button. And I could make this a component by simply selecting up here. There's the star icon, or the diamond icon rather, and I could just select it and I created the component. This is the master. If I make a copy by option drag, this is an instance, and you can see on the layers list, the icon is a clear icon. It's a diamond icon. This is the master. This is an instance. And with an instance, whatever I do on the master is going to show up on the instance. So if I want to change this color to green, it'll show up on all instances. Okay. So there's things you could do with instances which are called overrides, because not every button's going to have the word save. Right? Some buttons are going to have whatever, go, or any other word. So to change that, you could change that. That's called an override. And if you need to, you could also change the color of an override. To go back to, say you didn't want this color, you wanted to change it, you know, you want to go back to what the master was. Over here in your properties panel are your, you know, push overrides to main components, or reset your overrides, and it just brings it back. So let's go into this one and look at it. If I wanted to make the master the overrides, I could go back into that instance and I could push overrides to the master. Okay, so just wrap that. That's a simple concept. And I'm going to show you how we're going to take this and use auto layout within this as well. I don't know if everyone has done this project yet. It's a reproduction from Compass is a real estate, and they're part of what this is a piece of what you're going to reproduce in this project. I can't remember which week it's in. But this is a perfect example of creating a component with auto layout. So this is a master, and if I created this and created it as a component, then I could just duplicate this and then I could replace that image. If I selected the image in the layers list, and I go to the image in the properties panel, and I will choose another image and add it. So this is a component, and this is an instance of that component. The power of components is when you're reproducing stuff, the design is already done. You're just reproducing it. When you're designing things, that's where it becomes pretty powerful. So for example, if I went into this master and I said, you know what, I think coming soon would probably look better on the right-hand side. If I moved it to the right, then it would move it on all instances to the right. So that's where it becomes pretty powerful. Also, let me see what else I have here. All right. I hope everyone's got that concept. It's pretty basic. So you have components where you could create a master and copies of those masters. So you have them across multiple pages, and you can make adjustments to that. One thing I want to talk about, especially with this component here, is I combined it with auto layout, and we're going to talk about auto layout now. Auto layout's a powerful tool, but it's also it can be a little challenging, I will admit. But I'll just show you the basics and the power of auto layout. So if we look at this, this is a button. This is a button I created. It's pretty simple. It's got an icon. It's got word. It's got background color, a linear gradient. So I'll show you how I created this with auto layout. First thing I did was to create text. And I want to give it a background. I could do a background one of two ways. I could give the button background as a rectangle, or I could just apply auto layout to this, and I'll do that in a second. So to apply, you just right click, add auto layout, and if you look on the layers list, let me call this button. Auto layout is applied. It's like a folder, and inside that is the word button. So if you look at the frame, I could style that frame. So I'm going to give it a fill. I'm going to give it a gradient. Let's give it a linear gradient. This color is going to be green, and this color is, what would I do, red? The bottom color, once I select that, is going to be red. Wow, that's a crazy gradient. And I'm going to change the button color to white, so it's legible. And I'm going to give it a corner radius right up there. Great, now I have a button. I need a little more padding left and right, and I also want to add an icon to this. So when you select the parent, the auto frame up here, you can see your auto layout information here. And right now there's 8 pixel padding around it. So I could adjust that here. But you know what? I think I want a little more padding left and right. So when I click on this little icon here, this gives me my padding top, bottom, left, right. So let's adjust these. I'm going to make these 10, maybe make this 30. And that's 10. All right. So there is my padding. Okay. Now I want to add the icon. I found this icon. And in order to get it within my my auto layout, I could drop it right here within the layers list like that, or I could drag it right on. And you see that blue line that comes up on the button? That's telling me where it's going to put it. It's saying like, do you want it here or do you want it over here? So I'm going to push it here. And there's my button. So when you look at this is riding a little high. How do I adjust that? I go back to my frame, the button, and I go back to the properties panel where my auto layout information is. I'm going to click on that subtle little alignment and padding. See these blue dots? I'm going to put that right in the middle. And there it is. And there's my button. Maybe I want a little more space between the heart and the button. So what I do is make sure I click on that frame. Right here is my space in between, and I could easily adjust that. So that's a simple button, and that's pretty powerful. Now, if I change the words, the padding will stay the same. So the button expands with the word. What I could also do is, let me show you this. So if I create, these are good for e-commerce. You see these a lot. They're kind of like tags you may see. Oops. Let's make that white. Let's give this. All right. Simple tag. And I could take these 3 frames and I could select them all and apply auto layout to that. And now they're in a larger frame. So let's go look at the layers list. Frame 5. You could see there are other frames within it. What's powerful about this is I could play with spacing between them. I could obviously, oops. Change the words and it will, and I could also flip them. So that's easy enough to do. By just selecting it and hitting your arrow keys, you can move them however you want. You can also stack them. Oops, let's go to the parent and stack them. So you could see the power of this, and you could imagine playing with text in a footer. You see stacked text of columns, and you could take this and you could select these 2 parent frames and put that in an auto layout. And do that. And play with those. All right. So I want to go back to the compass thing, and I want to, let's dive in a little deeper on this and see what I did. So we created a component, and let's look at this component. Let's look at the layers. And I'm going to close these. So we have the image, and that is the bottommost layer. And if you look at the properties panel, we have the image, and then we have a linear blend on top of it. And that linear blend, if I just close the image, just creates this darkness over the image so the white text will show. I also have an auto frame for coming soon and for this and for text. So coming soon, why did I do that? Why did I put it in an auto? You know, because if I wanted to change the text, it would change it for all of them within it. So let's look at this thing here. If I open this auto frame here, so this is in a frame, these stats. And the reason why I did that is because if I needed to adjust things a little bit, I could do it in the auto frame, and it would do it on the components. It would do it on either of them. I could also maybe I wanted to put, you know, how many baths, you know, in the middle. So I would select it, hit the arrow key, and do it that way. So that's where the power comes in for those things. I hope everyone's got that. I think I've covered most things in terms of auto layout and what you're going to play with and components. Let me see what else I got here. It's your buttons. All right. So keep playing with them. You know, try them. Especially when you're working on those reproduction projects, you should be playing with auto layout, with components, and just testing it out and seeing what's working, what's not working, and then figuring out how to fix it. Okay. The next thing, we have like 15 minutes. So let me just check my notes and make sure we covered most everything. The other thing that's really important with design and helps with workflow is I'm thinking by Unit 5, I think you're mostly using text styles and color styles, really important. So to create a text style, really simple. Let me take creating a text style. You know, you get text once you figure out what, you know, if you figured out like, yeah, this looks good. This is the size I want for my header. This is, you know, the weight and everything. I feel good about it. You're going to select your text. And then in the properties panel, there's this little icon, the style icon. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to hit this plus button right here. I'm going to create a new style. Call it style 1. Create style. So that's great. Now I could apply it to anything. Instead of me going in here and putting in, you know, the font, the size, the weight, I select the text, I go over to text styles, I find style 1, and I tap on it. So now they're both the same. And if I need to change my style, I just select the text, roll over the words style 1, and there's a little, I can make adjustments, and it changes it for all of them. That project I showed you in the middle, in the beginning, that was text styles, color styles are so helpful, because when you're looking on your phone with Figma Mirror, when you're designing for an app, make sure you look at all your app designs on your mobile device while you design. That's where you make adjustments. You can make color adjustments. You can make text adjustments. You could do the same thing, color styles, similar to text styles. Remember, just select the color, roll over, create a new one, ready. Okay, so now you have a style. Okay, let me just move this over, make sure. 1 second. Okay. Let's talk about some plugins that I use that I think are really good. There's a ton of plugins out there. Some of them have a subscription model to them, like Stark, which we don't want to pay, right? We want free plugins. Others are great ideas. They have a lot of bugs to them. So these are maybe not the sexiest plugins, but something that's really useful for you now and will be useful for you as a UX designer. I use all the time. One of them is called Vector Logos. And let me just find that. Vector Logos plugin. This is a great plugin. Because as a UX designer, you're always going to need like your social icons or your social logos, and you don't want to reproduce logos. I know we have in this course where you're reproducing some logos, and that's good because you're learning about vector and points and handles and how to manipulate them. But in the real world, you're trying to find logos. You want the real brand logos. Vector Logos and Brands is great. Let me show you how it works. If I needed to find a Google logo, I just go into my list. I find under plugins, Vector Logos, you get a window. Type in Google, hit search. I have all these Google logos. And once you select one, it just shows up here. Really powerful. And it's SVG. So I would encourage you to load that one up. Let's see, another plugin I found that was useful. If you're, one of the things that's really challenging is when you have text and you're looking to apply a font, it doesn't, I mean, I'm pretty versed in fonts, but like I don't know what Jim Nightshade looks like. So let's click on it. I mean, that's a tough way to look at fonts that way. I mean, you could go on to Google Fonts and kind of see what it looks like. But there is, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Figma is working on this where it'll look like the font. But in the meantime, there is a plugin. And it's called Better Font Picker. And it loads, and these are all the fonts that are loaded. And you could see what the font looks like. And that comes in pretty handy. Okay. Cool. So those are two plugins that are important. I think will come in really handy. Another one, Unsplash. Unsplash is pretty good. You need an image on the fly. Just, you could easily search for it, drag it over. So Unsplash, and they're free. All that, I think you've been using them throughout the course. Another resource, this is not a plugin, which I'm surprised they don't have plugins for this yet, is components. So when you create an app, maybe an app screen, let's see. If I'm here and you notice the battery bar on your mobile device, it has the time, it has the battery and everything. I've had some students recreate that, and that's great. I don't think you need to, because there is a file out there that's free. It's in community. It's called iOS 11 Components for iPhone X. And they have all these components. So you could just take and select the battery bar, copy it, bring it into your file, so you don't have to recreate these things. So that's iOS 11 Components for iPhone X. Another one, I'm not sure if the students have gotten to this part in the course, but there is a bit where you will create an icon set. An icon set that lives at the bottom of an app, usually home and profile and like and search. To create an icon set, an easy way or a helpful way to create an icon set is by using a template to guide you in creating icons. So I'm going to go into this set that I found on Figma community just to show you how this designer created this. So this designer created this icon set. I don't know how many icons, a couple hundred icons here. And if we zoom in on this heart and you look at it, every icon is the same stroke. It's 2 pixel. And every icon is designed within a 24 by 24 pixel grid. And that's really important when you're designing for icons. Icons, you want them to be consistent throughout the application. They have templates out there that will help you let's see if this is it. That help you organize your icons when you design it. So let's go into it. So this is a preview. If I zoom down into the component, let's look at this. Really, let's look at this. So this component is 24 by 24. There is a 2 pixel margin, and then there are some guides here to help you when you're designing. So I created this search icon. It is 2 pixel. I could adjust it. I could make this larger if I wanted, but I'm designing within this frame. And you will design all your icons within that frame because it makes them, it gives consistency in terms of size throughout your icon set. Once I feel comfortable, I could grab a 24 by 24 component of it. They also have 40 by 40 and 60 by 60. So I would encourage you, especially when you get to building icons, use an icon template. It's really important. Okay. And I think there are other resources out there in terms of learning about Figma. I know this designer, there's a lot of YouTube channels out there. This designer is pretty good, Antonia. Keeps it really simple, not too complicated. And then in community, there are, I assume everyone is using Figma community. Go back to your list. Community has tons of resources and it's growing every day. When you get into community, you could explore by just clicking on these plugins and see what's out there and play with them. There's also design systems, there's wireframing. This is stuff you'll probably use a lot of when you get into the academy, typography, website, UI kits. So really explore Figma community. It's really a great resource for you as you move through this and learn about everything UX design. Figma is a really great program. I mean, prior to Figma, there was Sketch, which was great, but you know, all these competitors came out after Sketch. Figma, XD, Marvel, Framer. Figma just seems like it's, you know, the new kid on the block, or at least it's the most popular kid. It's free. Yeah, it's better font picker, and so I think that's what's gravitating. But there's new programs coming out all the time. Keep on top of the Figma updates. You should be getting emails if you have an account. And I'm looking at the chat, and I just want to show one last plugin. We've got a couple of minutes. Accessible colors. That's a good one. So there is another plugin. So one of the things as a UX designer, which I think you'll learn a bit about in the academy, is being concerned with accessibility. Accessibility, there's a bunch of standards out there in terms of you know, being concerned with people who are, you know, who may have poor vision, making sure you have good contrast, and there's also color blindness that you have to concern yourself with. And there are plugins for that. There's one just called Colorblind, and you could pick your color and you could see what it looks like in those 8 forms of color blindness. And that, you know, that could be really important down the road when you're designing. You want to test those things. A big thing I see a lot with students is contrast, and having good contrast. Text on images. Text on images for designers is, you know, designers concern themselves all the time with, will the text show up? Is it clear enough? Will it show up on different devices? Because remember, you know, everything looks good on an iPhone, but sometimes what looks good on one device, like an iPhone, may look different on a Samsung. So you would need to concern yourself with that. All right, so let's take this image really quickly. You know, if I put man, look at that font. Look at that. Let's make this light, and let's make it white. And let's. So sometimes I see this in projects where you have text over an image, and it looks like this. This is not going to fly. You're going to have people that have, you know, poor vision that will just not be able to read that. So there's things you could do. One thing, do not put a drop shadow behind your text. Just do not do that. That opens a whole can of worms. But usually what you do is you treat the photo. Similar to what I just showed you in the compass thing, I would select my image and then add a fill on top of it. And when I click on this fill, I could do a solid. I mean, there's the text. It looks great. Now I could see it. I could still see the image too. So anytime you see text on top of an image, unless it's a clear blue sky and you have text on top of it, the image is usually treated somehow. So keep that in mind anytime you're putting text on top of an image. You could also do a linear blend, where you're just taking it going from dark to transparent. So that's really important. So there's this plugin for color blindness. There's also Adobe Color. Just type in Adobe Color. They have, you could also test your colors with, to see if they have good contrast. Let's see what that is. Adobe. Adobe Color Tool. Let's look at this. So the Adobe Color Tool, this is pretty helpful. Under accessibility tools, they have contrast. They give you a rating if it meets the guidelines. That's a contrast checker, and then color blindness. What your colors will look like with users with different forms of color blindness. So that's color.adobe.com. And I think that is it. I will end it there. Thanks for listening. I will stop sharing.
Hi, I'm back.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony and Kaio, for participating today. We appreciate all of your help. This was really, really great for our students. And I think so many more of them are going to view the recording and really get a lot out of it. So thank you so much for participating. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.